Kansas football's preseason training camp is heating up as the season opener is just on the horizon. Here are a few position battles I have my eye on as the 2022 season nears and KU wraps up its final 2 weeks of preseason camp. And it's hard not to start anywhere but the linebackers room. No position group on the entire roster underwent as much of a facelift as that position group did this offseason. KU brought in 5 new players to go with returning starters Gavin Potter and Rich Miller. And there's also the offseason development of Taiwan Berryhill. So overall, you're looking at KU being able to go 6 deep. And Chris Simpson said he's at the point where he's starting to trust those 6 players. As for the big question mark, it's going to be how does that 2 deep even shake out? Who starts where? Who are the backups? And where are they fitting in as well? Starting at the top, Ohio State transfer Craig Young is the player I have my eye on heading into the season. He's going to start at KU's hawk position, which is a position that is kind of tailored to someone with Young's skill set. Young is a supreme athlete and arguably one of the best athletes on KU's entire team. He's going to be asked to play in space, cover some really good tight ends and wide receivers at times, while also going in and helping KU out in the run game as well. But the real question mark comes at who starts at the other 2 linebacker spots. Is it Potter and Miller who started at those 2 spots last year? Or does someone like Eric Gilliard, a UCF transfer, step in? Does Lorenzo McCaskill, a Louisiana transfer, step in there? Those 2 players are big bodies that can really help KU out stopping the run. Gilliard is someone in particular that has been in the program since the spring and has garnered praise from Chris Simpson, saying that he's come along really well as fall camp has progressed. And then there's McCaskill, who showed up a little later than the other players, but is progressing nicely. And then, of course, there's Taiwan Berryhill, who Simpson tabbed as the most improved player for KU this offseason. So overall, you're really looking at Craig Young being the favorite to start at Hawk. I think you have to say Rich Miller is one of the favorites to start at either one of those Mike or Will linebacker spots. He has a lot of experience playing this scheme and spending time around this coaching staff, so he's a trusted player at this point. But it's still a lot to be decided over the final few weeks of camp. And so that's going to be a huge position battle that I'll have my eye on. I think the second one I'll have my eye on defensively is going to be that second cornerback spot. Right now, I think we can say that Kalon Gervin is going to start at one of those cornerback positions. Gervin played a ton of football at Michigan State and was a starter for them 2 seasons ago, but decided to transfer to KU over the offseason. Gervin's going to start at one spot, and most likely Shad Dabney will be backing him up there. But on the other side, there's a really, really intriguing positional battle going on between Romello Dotson and Jacoby Bryant. Those are 2 young players that both started games for KU last season and both had flashes where they showed some positive moments. The question going into this year is, what is the staff going to be looking for? Well, the big thing is going to be consistency, but also bringing a physical presence on the outside. That's something that defensive backs coach Jordan Peterson talked about this week when we chatted with him, saying that he'd prefer if someone had the ability of tackling, being a consistent player, over someone being a high-end coverage player, but a liability in terms of physicality or providing some run support as well. So you're looking at those 2 players really battling it out. And then there's also Monte McGarry from Utah State, who is slowly coming along after he had off-season surgery. So that position battle will be super intriguing. It'll be interesting to see, too, if KU decides to ride the hot hand over the course of a season. And maybe Romello Dotson starts the season out as the starter, but maybe Jacoby Bryant has a really good few weeks and supplants him. Maybe it's vice versa. Regardless, that's a fun position battle to keep an eye on. Switching to the other side of the ball, you have to go to tight end. I think that's an intriguing group and could be one that's a plug and play depending on the matchups. Andy Kotelnicki has a lot of pieces at his disposal, and I think you're going to see someone like Trevor Cardell play a lot of football for KU this fall. Cardell played the most snaps of any tight end last season, which was a bit surprising when I first saw that. You think maybe Mason Fairchild, who started a lot of games for KU, would have been that guy, but no, it was Cardell. And so he figures to be a big piece of this offense this year. But then you've also got Fairchild, who last season struggled in run blocking, but talked about during camp that he spent a lot of time working on that this offseason and feels that he's really improved in that regard as well. Of course, you can't talk about tight ends without bringing up Jared Casey as well. Casey, who was put on scholarship over the offseason, had a slower start to camp, had a hamstring injury that hindered him early, but is starting to get his sea legs back. And I think he's someone that, depending on the matchup, is going to play a lot. You look back to last season, he was arguably one of KU's top performers on the offensive side of the ball. So he'll be used in a myriad of ways for KU as well. And then, of course, you have junior college transfer Tavita Noah, who, when you see him in person, he's a large human being. He looks closer to an offensive lineman than maybe even a tight end. And he's going to help KU out in the run game and run blocking and helping out those offensive linemen so that KU can really run the ball with some of those running backs. And then finally, there's someone like Will Huggins, who has struggled with injury during his KU career, but as fall camp has gone along, has been able to stay on the field and, according to coaches, has started to put things together as camp has gone on. So overall, the tight ends, who's going to start? That's a question, but also who is relied on when and how does KU use those tight ends is going to be something fascinating to watch over the final half of camp and even into the 2022 football season. And finally, I think wide receiver is fascinating. I think right now you're looking at the returning players and Trevor Wilson, Luke Grimm, and Lawrence Arnold being your three starters. But after that, it's a huge question of who fills out the depth chart. You can look at someone like Douglas Emilien. Does he compete for a starting job, or is he just trying to keep his place on the two deep? That'll be a question going into the final weeks. Who Emilien has a ton of talent and will be a big time player for KU during his time in Lawrence. But who else is there competing alongside him? Well, Tanaka Scott has received rave reviews. So too has Quentin Skinner, who the players said was one of the top players in the first scrimmage last week. And then there's also someone like Stephen McBride, who played a lot last year. So overall, you're looking at that, the starters being not set in stone, but you have a good idea of who's going to start. The question is going to be who fills out the two deep. My money is going to be on Douglas Emilien playing a big role for KU this season, even if he doesn't start the season as a starter. And Tanaka Scott is someone else I have my eye on as well. So overall, you're looking at there being some fascinating position battles over the final 2 weeks of fall camp. And as always, stay tuned to Phog.net for the latest on those position battles and the rest of KU's camp.